Hello and welcome to episode 100 of Pakistonomy. It just was in the recent past that we started this podcast and had episode one with Khurram Hussain with a fan in the background. And fast forward to here in a post-pandemic or a pandemic world, and we are hitting episode 100. I want to thank all of you for tuning in over the years. On this podcast, I want to thank all of the guests who've graced us with their time and their insights over the last few months. And today's episode is a really special one, not only because it's episode 100, but because I have the honor and the opportunity to talk with Mr. Musadaq Zulqarnain, who is the chairman of Interloop Limited, the largest publicly traded and publicly owned textile companies in Pakistan. He's also chairman of Interloop Holding and its subsidiaries. He also serves on the board of Karandas. And for those of you who tuned in a few months ago when we talked about Rast, Karandas played a key and critical role in that. And I think the Rast ecosystem, the rails that it has built for digital payments will transform Pakistan's economy. So Musadaq Saab, thank you so much for taking out the time and welcome to Pakistonomy.
Thank you, Uzair. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to have a conversation with you and see what I can add to the knowledge of everybody and learn from you as well.
Thank you. And let's jump in with and start with Interloop. It's obviously a success story that, at least to me and people of my generation who've looked at wanting to be entrepreneurs or looked at Pakistan's entrepreneurial talent and what's possible. It's a huge success story, right? It shows us what Pakistani business is capable of, that it's capable of competing toe-to-toe with world-class companies around the world and work with them and trade with them and get investment from them and expertise. Help us understand the journey that you've been on with Interloop, how it began, how far it's come, and then what's on the horizon.
Okay, it's a 30-year, long story. And I would say Pakistan has some wonderful organizations, and Interloop is one of those. But when I see back on the hindsight, it appears that not doing the business in typical Pakistani state culture style was the beginning. And it was not a conscious decision, I would say, because we had no experience in business. So when we started this as a small cottage industry, we just implemented what we learned at home or our schools about being ethical. So now, after 30 years, I think I can say with quite certainty that the myth that if you follow ethics and be ethical, you cannot succeed has been broken. So I would say when we started, the main reason for our success, if I tabulate 3 or 4 or 5 of them, would be being ethical. Then you see investing in young, educated talent and nurturing it, giving respect to the workforce, and investing and never being shy of investing into new technology, and reinvesting the earnings rather than moving money here and there. What we in the very initial years when we started having success, what we realized is that even today, Pakistan has in the textile sector some great organizations which are very big. But when you see and have a look on the global scale, the size of our organizations is very small. They are like minions. And I keep repeating this statistics that the largest exporter from Pakistan is $400+ million. And the largest group out of Sri Lanka is $3 billion. So you can compare these sizes. So what we did was that we thought that we should, although to start with, it was a very cottage industry. Socks was a cottage field at that stage. But we thought that we will keep on investing in just socks rather than, after 5, 6, 7 years of success, started diversifying within the textile into other. We would build the size and the quality and the expertise where we'll have the first right of refusal in the world. And that really, it's not just the economies of scale. It's just, having that knowledge base and the ability to reinvest into R&D and all that thing, and train your people, invest in your people, send them abroad, get them trained. So all this put together, I think it helped us to grow. One thing which I must point out, which we started about, let's say, 20 years ago, and has matured during the path, is that we have always had midterm, long-term plans. We don't decide on a day-to-day basis, as unfortunately most of the Pakistan businesses have to do, because there are no policies. But one has to have some leap of faith and do some analysis and where we want to be in next 3, 4, 5 years, where the world is going to be, what's going to happen with Pakistan. And based on that, we have been, forming 5-year visions. And every 5 year, we have a vision, like we had 2015 vision, then 2020, now we have 2025. And we actually specify all the areas, what we need to do, what are going to be. We do a very extensive SWOT analysis, pestle analysis, look into the threats which might come our way, how can we mitigate them. And we plan all our projects according to them. And so that has helped us, to keep focus on what we want to do, irrespective of the government policies, irrespective of what the international situation is doing. And that has helped us focus on a growth, and when I say growth, it's not the top line. It is the growth of our people, growth of our knowledge base. So I think in a nutshell, that's how I'll put it. Why Interloop has been successful.
That's awesome, and there are some nuggets there that I want to touch a bit on. Your point on ethics stood out to me because, just in terms of my own background, I come from a business family. My grandfather and my father had their own business in Pakistan. My father still does his own business of importing jute and things. And I remember as a child sort of going to his office in Jodia Bazaar and sitting with my grandfather. And they always said, right, you need to be very ethical. And this is not the norm in Pakistan, but this was drilled down, right? And I remember engaging with or hearing some stories of traders who would, send a sample of rice to England. It was A grade. And then when the order came, they would do it A minus, right? And everyone knew that they were cutting corners. And that meant that the customer never returned. But this was the way things worked. Why is it, and I want to get your sense on this, is why is it that we have, and ethics is a problem in business all over the world. Pakistan is not unique on this. But from your point of view, why is it that it is in the context, like we're a low trust society, that this is so important in terms of building a business within the Pakistani context, and where we are? And why is it so often that Pakistanis often view that, we're not as ethical as perhaps we should be?
I think it is the whole atmosphere. We can't, if you start looking at the ethics, we can not isolate the business from the overall society. Unfortunately, if you look at our ethics, we have, as a society, we prefer to buy medicines which are made in Europe. We would, when it comes to anything homegrown or homemade, we don't have trust in that. We can have a lot of discussions in the drawing rooms, but when it comes to paying taxes, I think most of the elite, they don't pay taxes. They claim to be, so honest and so patriotic, but stealing taxes has been considered as a norm now. Managing tax, as you said, managing taxation, or trying to avoid taxation all over the world is prevalent. But in Pakistan, actually paying tax is considered to be a crime. You can't be proud of being honest taxpayer. And any money which has been saved without paying any taxes is not considered bad here. It is justified as a norm. We lie about our lifestyles. So as a society, I think we are not like that to start with. It is a gradual, deterioration where, and I think most of the blame would go to the elite. As the time progressed, the elite capture, that started happening, and it grew. And with that, the only mark of respect in the name, in the minds of most of the people is now money or wealth, unfortunately. So a quick buck has become probably the goal of everybody in Pakistan, and that has, you see, driven us away from ethics. And to where you started, I think it's not just that you fulfill your commitments with your customers, or it is the whole thing. How do you deal with your employees? How do you in Pakistan, paying social security is considered as tax. Guys, social security is the security for your own people who work for you. So it's the concept which you see drives it up. So I was myself not sure. I thought that maybe it is because we are in the export business, relatively speaking. So it is easier for us to say that we are doing an ethical business and all that. But there are other aspects of the export business which we have to deal with in Pakistan. Now the proof of the pudding came when we got I would say we saw it happening, but on record, if I can mention something, it is after our listing on the stock exchange. So as I said, we have some wonderful textile companies besides Interloop, and there are other corporations in Pakistan which are purely Pakistani, and they're good corporations. I'm not trying to say that we don't have good corporations, but when our IPO happened, our market cap was about, if I'm not wrong, 30 to 40% lower than the highest market cap textile composite firm on the stock exchange. Today, our market cap, as you said, is the highest, and the next one is half the size, not even half the size of Interloop's market cap. The number two company has a higher turnover, has a higher bottom line, and consistently than Interloop. So why would Interloop have double the market cap of a company which has greater turnover consistently, greater bottom lines consistently? I'm not saying that the other companies are not ethical. I think the difference people see is the transparency and the will to grow and to reinvest, and not being in business just to make money. Businesses have to make money. So I think that makes a difference, and that I think you have to be patient about it, and being best and being, you see, regarded as very, very, you see, honorable has its value. That's what youngsters who are starting up new things, they should understand. They might not be able to buy a sports car in the next 5-10 years, but I think the reputation which you will build, a time will come then that the banks will be after you, the customers will be after, suppliers will be after you, but you'll have to wait. There can't be, you see, overnight miracles. You have to, in a society like Pakistan, you have to be patient, do your thing, and I think you'll have success.
Well, as they say that it takes 100 years to build a reputation and maybe not even a day to destroy it, right? And I think it's a lot of hard work that goes into it. The other thing you mentioned was this focus on socks. And I think that was also awesome from my perspective as a student of business and business strategy, because I remember reading this case study in my undergrad about, I think it was a Japanese or a Korean company that singularly focused on the zippers for jeans. And that was their thing. They continued to invest in that. And apparently 30, 40 years ago, zippers were a big problem because they weren't that quality. They would break often and there would be a big concern on customers. And they said, we're going to make the best zippers in the world. And now they are still making that. And that's their core competency. And they dominate the market, right? Because they're that good. And I think that, again, reinvest technology, figure out the problems. I think Interloop's done a fantastic job at that. You mentioned 5-year plans. And one thing that I was reading about, and I asked people before this interview who sort of follow Interloop, that they talked highly of was the sustainability agenda of the business. Help us understand where it is, what the focus is, and why is it that Interloop is looking at the sustainability agenda from a business strategy perspective? Like, what's driving you to focus so aggressively on this?
So there, it's a very interesting question. When we, as I mentioned, when we started business, we were a cottage industry, and none of us were business school graduates. So we evolved, we learned how to do business on the way. So we had seen that the companies would have a mission statement or a vision statement written on their websites or on their literature, but we had none for the first many years. And when we thought that now we should have a statement which should describe us, we sat together all the because we used to have some sort of a corporate culture from day one. We would always do things in a consultative way. So in the board, we sat together, and we thought that we should have a mission which actually describes us, which is not just a statement, which is so we took several months to have discussions at various levels of the company to see what is in our DNA, what we have been doing consciously or unconsciously as a business. And based on that, then we came to a conclusion and we gave it words as our mission statement and it is to be an agent of positive change by pursuing ethical and sustainable business. So this, when we devised this statement, we knew that this whole statement is largely part of our DNA, but now everything which we do in future will be governed. This is our reason for existence now, from now onwards. So we have to be agents for positive change for our stakeholders and community. And stakeholders is a very wide word, as you know. And it has to be ethical and sustainable. So when we said sustainable, we meant a triple bottom line. We from sustainability, we mean the planet, the people, and the prosperity. Some corporates call it profit, but we call it prosperity. So the triple P bottom line, sustainability, that everything, every project we do, every decision we make, we'll try to see that it is under the umbrella of our mission. And we are not going to do anything which will negate our mission. So that's how we have been doing for the last 15 years at least. And so sustainability was not a business strategy, it was a moral responsibility at that time. We thought it is, as a business, we are responsible to do that. We are not here to just look after the shareholder interest, we are here to look after the stakeholder interest. And this business will exist to be an agent of positive change for all the stakeholders and to look after the sustainability. And since then, we started, you see, setting our own targets. In our visions, we will always have our targets for even the planet sustainability. We have targets for the people sustainability, where we have projects for the people who work for us and also the people in the community. And we have 5-year targets, how many schools we are going to build, how many undergrads we are going to help graduate, how many girls we are going to help graduate from universities and things like those. But then we have planet sustainability goals every 5 years set. And this was before there was too much of, you see, talk of sustainability, and we were already on that path. We would not undertake any project if it is you see, against the sustainability agenda of our company. And now I think it has now become a buzzword, but we are already on that path. So we are not doing it that because one of our customers wants us to do, or there is a environmental need from the law. We are doing it because it's our responsibility, and we'll keep doing it. And we have been, by the grace of God, leading it. And the international corporates are quoting us, in fact, using us as an example. And in most of the, I don't want to name any customers or brands. I think in case of the topmost brands who are in way ahead in sustainability, more or less our agendas are aligned because we are already on that path. So sustainability is part of our DNA. We are not doing it, even if today there is opportunity that you don't work on sustainability, you can still export or do things. It has nothing to do with us. We'll do it because it's our planet, it's our home, it's our country, it's our water, it's our people, it's our responsibility. So it's had nothing to do. Now, because of that, if you get some business benefits, that was not the intent at the beginning. I hope I was able to clarify
No, I think that's helpful, and I think Interloop was the first mover in that. Right now, you have checklists on ESG, and that unlocks capital access on lower rates and things like that. And it's almost become a gimmick in that sense, right? Because you can skew your business plan and add in a few key buzzwords that will give an analyst the ability to check mark, and then okay, your ESG and whatever that means, and there's no measurement about the vision itself.
Absolutely, and we were not even aware, but only I think maybe a year or 10 months ago, we found out that after our IPO, the single largest shareholder of the free float is a fund which is invests on the basis of ESG, a foreign fund in our stock. We were not even aware, but yes, as you said, it does unlock a lot of potential in today's world.
And I think from a Pakistan perspective, right, it's awesome to see Interloop leading the way in this, because my belief, and I've spoken to a few people on this podcast as well, is that, look, where the world is in terms of sustainability, renewable energy, new methodologies, we almost have an advantage of leapfrogging ahead, because we are not tied to the old industrial economy the way, let's say, a United States or Europe is, because they're old industrialist societies. So as we invest, if we just keep our eye around the corner 25 years in advance, we can procure the technologies that are next generation by default, and we're not sort of stranded or handicapped by legacy assets, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And it's a huge opportunity for the country. And I'll get back to it in a bit. But another thing you said as a mission statement was agent of positive change. Textiles, if you look at Bangladesh or all over the world, they've been a big positive agent of change in terms of women and their participation and growth in the labor force. Interloops try to do this as well in Pakistan. And of course, Pakistan has serious cultural, educational challenges, societal challenges when it comes to women. I think the PDHS data last in 2018 that was released showed, and I was shocked, that 1 in 4 Pakistani women suffer from some level of abuse and harassment since age 15, right? Majority of them don't participate in the labor force, including those with tertiary education. What's Interloop's role in sort of bringing about that positive change, and what are you looking at in terms of the communities you're a part of, the workers that work for you, in terms of getting women to be a part of labor force, not only sort of as the stitchers and things like that, but coming up through as a managerial talent, so to speak?
So there, you mentioned Bangladesh, it is, you see, again, we have to see how much damaging it has been. Society in Bangladesh is not much different from us. Actually, I think if though their state, and rightfully so, their state has, kept itself secular and not, try to, bring religion into everything. But generally speaking, people in Bangladesh are more followers of religion than us. I've seen people over there in ordinary namaz, more people in the mosque than at our Jummah prayers. But that doesn't stop them from, bringing women folk into the work stream. And it has helped them a lot. Not only the women folk, because I was in conversation with a head of UN Women posted in Pakistan who was in Bangladeshi, and he did mention it with figures, but I can just give you the general idea that, by bringing in women workforce, not only that the efficiencies of the businesses today, 76% of their government workforce is women. We have operated in Bangladesh, I've seen them work. So not only that they benefited, I think the marriageable age in Bangladesh went up by 3 years, the statistics show. Previously, the girls were married away in 14, 15 years age on average. Now, the marriages were delayed and they would work to, earn for their families, for themselves. And when with 3 years of marriageable age going up, even when they get married, the time difference between the marriage and the first child is about 3 years now, because they want to continue working. So what happened is that there was a 5 to 6 years lag now for the last 15, 20 years, or the first child of a girl. So you can imagine how much it has helped them to bring down their population growth. So they had more population than West Pakistan in 1971, and today they are 180 or so million, and we are 220 million and counting. So this has some indirect benefits. About Interloop, you see, again, we have been in textiles, and then having our main operations only in Lailpur, or what we call Faisalabad today. It was very difficult to convince girls, especially tertiary education, to come and work for a textile company. But now today, by the grace of God, I think we have attained a reputation where everybody wants to work for Interloop, because they think that there's the conditions are so you can't just employ. You have to provide the conditions, not by just the corporates, but the male colleagues. They have to be conditioned to give that respect and that space to women, and also encourage women to, you see, when they enter the company, they are no more of women. They are just executives. I keep telling our people that you are not a female merchandiser or a male merchandiser or a lady doctor or a male doctor. You're a doctor or a merchandiser or an engineer. So we hire a lot of STEM degree girls also, and they are working, and we have a lot of girls now in managerial cadre, in the senior manager, general managers, vice presidents. They are rising up gradually, and girls who have worked with us have been picked up by international brands to work overseas also, which I am very happy to do that. We have had, you see, not only just you have to create some policies which we have created in Interloop, and I think it's a long subject, so I would rather not touch upon that. But you also have to have some affirmative actions. Now, every year when we induct management training officers, as an affirmative action, we have a requirement that 50% of the MTOs will have to be girls. So every year, so the last many years. So there's this year we inducted about 80 management training officers, 40 of them were girls. And we keep on doing that. And we are giving them reconnect policy that if they have to leave the company because of personal reasons, like she's getting married or their family is being transferred to another, it's not a commercial reason. They can come back to the company whenever they are ready. Or they can, for example, their maternity leaves, but then once a child is born, there is a 1 year of grace period for the female executive to pick her own flexible times, whether she wants to come 1 day, 2 day. She doesn't need to get approval from her manager. So it's up to her. Give them flexibility to provide the world-class daycares and you see centers. And we have now daycare centers on all our plants and offices. And you won't believe me that they don't want to take the kids away till they're 5-6 years old. When they can go to the kindergarten, but the kindergarten at the premises is so good that so you have to provide these facilities, and also, as I said, to make the male colleagues understand how you have to accommodate the females and not to, you see, harass them or whatever. On the worker side, the Pakistan laws have been very, you see, have not been conducive. In the Factories Act, they don't allow that you have a shift which is not rotated, and the third shift for women in the night is not allowed. So you on the expensive equipment where you have to rotate shifts, it's difficult to put in too much women into. So we are working with the government to get those things removed. We are trying to do things like investing huge amounts of money to build hostels for workers, even female workers, so that if they have to rotate in shifts, they don't have to bother about, you see, traveling at night and all those things. The society has to, you see, it is not just good for the business or the women. I think the whole society will benefit if we let more women work for businesses and factories and everywhere.
And I think the investments that you've made is awesome, right? Because even from a purely business perspective, an employee, male or female, who's not worried about childcare, who's not worried about where they're leaving their kid, getting a phone call, hey, he stuck something in his ear, now you need to come, etc., is a more productive employee They're more focused on their job.
Absolutely.
And I think the things you're providing are best in class in the world. I mean, there are many US companies that do not provide what you just said is offered on the premises. So I think that's awesome. I want to shift gears in the second half of this conversation towards Pakistan, broadly speaking. And I follow you on Twitter, and I think diplomatically you share your insights in terms of what you think is going on. And I would love for you to share your perspective on where things are. Let's start with the broader economy. I think we're back in the IMF. The Prime Minister announced cut in petrol prices, electricity prices. That puts a big question mark on where the IMF program is. But really, it's a populist decision that he himself or the PTI itself is not the only party to follow. Others have done it since at least I was younger, and you've seen it perhaps longer as well. Where do you see the economy? I mean, we continue going, and I don't like the word boom bust cycle. A lot of people refer to it as that because for there to be a boom, you need to have 6 to 8% growth for 5, 6, 7 years. We don't even have that. How do you see the economic prospects, and where do you see consistently policymakers go wrong when it comes to fixing the core issues that we continue to face?
So there, I think in your last part, you have mentioned what I was about to say, that we start, you see, rejoicing too early on a 5-6% growth for a few months. We think that now everything is okay. To be honest, I think let's be realistic. And let's see how our economy has done. And I'm not talking about the current government or any other political government or the martial law dictatorships. If you look at what we have done during the last 15, 20 years, and if you look where we are headed for the next 5 years, no matter what we do today, the way we are managing it, our economy is in a very, very, very bad shape. A few months of something good happening doesn't mean that the economy is on the right track. It has never been on the right track for the last many years. Let's be very clear from my point of view, unfortunately. And we can keep on, you see, debating this. There could be, and I'm not an economist. I don't, but I can, as a layman, I can see that the reason is that, and I don't think we'll be able to very easily fix it. IMF or no IMF or bringing in wizards from World Bank or IMF or whatever. Because you see, first of all, there is lack of political will all along, across the board. And again, as I said, it's not just the political parties, it's the dictatorships also. And on top of that, which is even more harmful, is the elite capture. And that elite capture has converted into, it used to be maybe 1 or 2 vested interests. Now there are multiple vested interests, which immediately, you see, try to capture the policy of the country to shape it in their own direction. And we end up nowhere. There's a few people, a few sectors making a lot of money, and we are back to it. So I think we as you know better than me, there are 2 issues. Always 2 issues in the economy. There is a current account deficit and there's a fiscal deficit. And let me also, you see, before I go there, I think we will need a charter of economy to be agreed by everybody, and we'll have to vigorously follow that for the next 5 to 10 years if we want to stabilize our economy. Saying after 1.5 years of or 2 years of IMF program that we have now achieved macroeconomic stability, it's I don't think there's, and within 2 months it's all gone. We just change paths, and so we first of all we need the charter of economy, and everybody will have to, you see, and especially the elite will have to either be made to agree to that and, you see, comply to that. And it's not that just the middle class and the lower middle class and the lower class have to pay the price of the charter of economy. On the fiscal deficit, I think I don't think it's a big problem. On the current account side, we have a problem, which is not easy to fix. On the fiscal side, I don't think we have a problem. Look at the boom we have at the upper level. People are minting money. Their highest number of luxury cars sale in Pakistan, and the lower class and lower middle class, they are not even getting 2 meals. So there is a lot of money there. There's a lot of lead capture. It's just a question of, you see, if we can use Nadra to so wonderfully implement the vaccination program better than even some of the first world economies, why can't you use it for, getting after the people who are spending so much of money? It's a no-brainer. We have to have, withdraw all those tax exemptions to those vested interests, those elite groups, real estates, and everybody who comes into that. I'm not just mentioning real estate. And you see, plug those areas where you can park your untaxed money and start taxing people. There is no shortcut to that. You can't gradually go after and gradually keep on increasing. There is so much of data is now available. So much of data is available, and in this age of data, if we can't, bring people into tax net, I think it is simply lack of political will or giving favors to certain vested. The other thing is, which is doable, is the SOEs. We are wasting almost $1 trillion on the state-owned enterprises. It's a no-brainer. Why can't we just, everybody agrees and we get rid of all that, and it's almost as much as we spend on defense. So people like me, they talk a lot about defense spending, which should be obviously controlled, but we don't talk about the $1 trillion which is being wasted on the state-owned enterprises year after year. So it's, in my opinion, in layman's opinion, it's not a difficult fix. It's just you need the willpower, and you have to, get rid of those people who start to influence the policy, if at all there is a policy, because of their vested interest. On the current account side, I think we have a serious problem because our economy is dependent on imports, and by curbing imports, you cannot grow. Our energy needs are there. We don't have any metallurgy, chemicals, machinery. We have to import that. But I think in the country, we have not been able to inculcate export culture where investment is made into value addition, and we can increase the productivity of our not only people but our plants, the way we work. We have not been able to use the knowledge side of our economy. We have a youth bulge. I just mentioned we took 80 MTOs. When we call for applications, there are, I think, more than 25,000 GPA 3+ applicants for a private company. So there are thousands and thousands and thousands of graduates we have. It's just that probably the quality of education needs to be tweaked. Why we were not able to, develop an IT-based economy which can export, that can be. The other day I was talking to the CEOs of one of the top IT companies in Pakistan, and he said that we need about 25,000 people to export $1 billion of IT software. And all we get in Pakistan is probably 5,000, which would need 3 months of training to become competent enough. And the rest, 20,000, would need 6 to 9 months. So our universities need to be, and then how about some health tourism? Why have we not been able to invest into training our paramedics, our nursing staff? Doctors you can get, but the basic thing for hospitals is that. Look at India. We can have billions and dollars of health tourism. So there could be a service industry and the export industry working hand in hand, and the government has to. Now there's an anti-export bias by saying that there's a lot of subsidies going on without actually trying to see whether it's a subsidy or not. If you are trying to have a same electricity price all across Pakistan, whether there's a theft or whether there's a losses, and then you're trying to transfer the burden of the domestic consumers, which needs to be subsidized, to the industry by levelizing the tariff. It's actually the industry subsidizing, and then you give some money and you say, okay, we are giving you subsidy to lower your. You have to give money to the domestic side and not overload the industrial sectors with the extra expenses which you do because of inefficiency and all that. And so that creates a negative bias against export, that they're getting a lot of subsidies. Yeah, they're actually paying more than the international prices for electricity. So this is what we have to see, that we have to bring down the cost of doing business. But exports, without increasing services and goods exports, I think we will have a very, very bad future years. We need to work on that and relentlessly for many years to work on our current account deficit.
I think one of the things that's, came to my mind as you were speaking, or two things were, one, and this was just happened yesterday, a friend of mine messaged, because I wrote about how the current account deficit is a problem, but what our policymakers ignore consistently is that you can plug the current account deficit by FDI. And why is it that our FDI flows are not increasing, particularly FDI flows in export sectors, because that's how you get the expertise, the productivity enhancements, etc. And he messaged me, he's like, well, you keep arguing for exports and FDI, and the policymakers keep giving you more debt and distortions in the market, right? And your electricity example made me think of that distortion, in the sense that because there is a core fundamental problem in the energy sector, all the way from energy mix to distribution and transmission, the distortion then creates more distortions in the way quote unquote subsidies are provided and things are leveled off. And we're just not having the conversation to, or the will to fix these core issues in the market. We see the same thing in the wheat market. We see the same thing in the real estate market, in the sense that I was looking at the data, the city of Pune in India, which is like a tiny city by Indian standards, raises more in real estate taxes than the entire province of Sindh. Like, it's insane. It should not be happening. Like, that's a resource that's there to be tapped into, because elites own property and we're not taxing them, and everybody else pays 17% sales tax. That's regressive. It's just insane. The one thing that struck to me, and these have been in conversations when people from Pakistan come here to Washington, a lot of times I'm told, look, Pakistan's a great place to invest because there is high return on equities in these key sectors. And I always press them. I'm like, well, from an economic perspective, if there is a high ROE, it means capital will flow into that sector because there are higher than anticipated profits. So the profit rate has to level off. And I'm like, well, what's your policy from a industry sectoral perspective to level that up? Why is it that there are persistently high ROEs? And I think that gets to your elite capture point and the policy point, right? Is that it's cornered the market. So it's just the charter of economy is so vital. I think that's the only way to progress. And I don't think that's going to happen given where we are politically, but I hope I'm wrong. Musadaq Saab, sorry, that was a long monologue in terms of my own views coming out
I think
here.
We are just discussing the economy, and I think you have a point of view which I completely agree with you.
And so let me ask you, and we're sort of on the tail end of our conversation. From your point of view, Interloop, no Interloop, just as a citizen living in Pakistan who watches the economy, has a stake in the business of the country, what are some risks that sort of, you think about that maybe keep you awake at night in terms of, we need to solve for this immediately or have a strategy to deal with it, because if we don't, the economy, the political economy, society itself is just going to be worse off than even where it is right now. So just help us understand what risks that you continue to think about in the country.
So Uzair, there could be many which we can think of, but as you said, maybe a couple. First of all, you see, economy itself is a big risk for Pakistan. And how can we fix it? We have discussed a lot on that. And that's an unending discussion. Economy itself is becoming a weak economy, is becoming a threat for Pakistan. And many of the issues which we have are because of our weak economy, because of the increased poverty and all that. But you see, if we put that aside, one thing which worries me is the intellectual and geopolitical isolation of Pakistan. We have, as I mentioned, Bangladesh and other countries. I think the state has been complacent, and we have misused religion too much in the last 2-3 decades, and the whole fabric of society is, you see now, fragmented into various beliefs and thoughts, and very primitive sort of approach towards what the religion actually interpretation is, and the way it is being you see implemented in a society, whether through legal system or through de facto you see implementation due to the blackmail of certain segments. So that is not because I am ashamed of being or what the world would say. I think as a society, it's hurting us. It's hurting us very badly, and it's hurting our growth and hurting our children. When we talk of geopolitics, I think we have been. I don't think we have any decent amount of respect in the Committee of Nations. We can claim to be a nuclear power or whatever. We don't have a consistent policy. In fact, we are moving from door to door, and in 2 months our policy appears to be shifting. One day we are pro-Turkey, the other day we are pro-Middle East, and then we are pro-China, and then we have to look towards US aid and all that, and our interests in the West. So we have become, you see, a laughing stock, if I may. We have to correct that. That is going to, it's not easy. It is, we cannot afford to be at the level where we are. On the practical side, there are other issues like the water is going to become a big threat, and because our subsoil water and our water resources are becoming scarce, and I think I'm really afraid where we are headed, and that is also putting our food security at risk. You have already seen, you mentioned wheat. We are, despite claiming to have bumper crops of wheat, we have continued to import wheat, which is, I don't know why. And we have to import cotton, we have sugar, everything is, you see, we don't have enough edible oil. So these are the things which are going to be, which are related to economy, but I think that they, on the country's stability and existence is under threat because of these things, if I may.
No, I fully agree with you, and I'll just add one to your set of risk, and I think you will agree with this as well, is we have a youth and we have a youth dividend potentially. It's not realized, and it's also the flip side of it is a ticking time bomb. And I just put myself in the shoes of a 20-year-old, out of Toba Tek Singh, let's say, or out of Peshawar or Quetta. You have aspirations, ambitions, because you have a cell phone, you're on TikTok, you're watching what's going on in the world, and the world is progressing rapidly. Your generation in the world is progressing rapidly despite all sorts of issues. And if your ambition and aspiration is not met, let's say you fast forward to 2035, you're 35 years old, you have 3 or 4 children, because that's the average for the youth in this country. You're going to be a very bitter human being. You're not going to be a good parent. You're not going to be able to provide for your children the way you anticipated. Your own dreams will not be met. And I think that's a very dangerous place for a country like Pakistan to be from a stability perspective, because that's millions of households unhappy, and that has an impact on the next generation. Forget about that. In the immediacy, they will be really, angry people who may do a lot of things that perhaps the elite selfishly of Pakistan need to think about that scenario. And as you said, be willing to give a little bit more as part of a charter of economy to grow the pie overall for everybody. And I think that to me is a huge thing that we often don't talk about in Pakistan, is that there is a youth dividend, but if it's not realized, it's going to be a ticking time bomb, and it is a ticking time bomb.
Absolutely, completely agree.
So, Musadaq Saab, this has been wonderful. Thank you for taking out the time, for gracing us with your presence for this milestone at Pakistonomy. Before I let you go, I would just ask any books that you would recommend people pick up and read it. They don't have to be about business, just something that has deeply influenced you and you think people should pay attention to.
So unfortunately, I'm not a very active reader, to be honest. Let me be very honest. I do read, but I'm a slow reader. So I looked at a couple of your podcasts from the past, so I knew this question might be coming. So the 2 or 3 books which I've read and I found them different or interesting, I picked up. So one is if you are interested in development economics or economy, One book which I liked a lot is how China became capitalist. So this is a book which in detail, it's a very interesting book, explains how Deng Xiaoping transformed China after the Cultural Revolution into the market economy, and it's a very interesting read. The other book which I read is not fiction, but it might have some element of fiction, but it is the romantic life of Mr. Jinnah, and all the problems he went through, and trying to explain. We talk about his marriage and all that, and but you see, trying to understand what he was going through. A book written again by Sheela Reddy, who has used letters and other things from Mr. Jinnah. And the book is Mr. and Mrs. Jinnah, The Marriage That Shook India. So this is a very interesting book for people who want to understand Mr. Jinnah and his personal life and the problems he was faced, and the intensity of love he had for young Ruti, and how she. So it does remove a lot of doubts which are there in the minds of people, and put it in the perspective of a political leader who has his own responsibilities also. So it's a very interesting book. The other book which I am now reading these days is trying to read these days is, I am, as I said, is as a slow reader, is by Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Keep Sharp. I know a lot of people have read it and they recommend it. So this is a very interesting book for people of all ages. Keep Sharp. So
thank you for those. No, this is really helpful. I'm definitely going to order Mr. and Mrs. Jinnah book, because I read The Sole Spokesman by Dr. Jalal. Stanley Wolpert's biography of Jinnah is a classic. So I want to sort of complete the trilogy, so to speak, and get a bit into the personal life.
Yes, it will be very different. Yeah, it will be a totally different thing about his personal life.
And I think the China book is super interesting in the sense that, particularly for a Pakistani audience, you often hear, should we, replicate the China model? And I half jokingly remind people that if you want to do what China did, the path through that lies through the Cultural Revolution. And perhaps you want to read about what happened in the Cultural Revolution, especially if you're on the upper echelons of society.
Yes. And then which led to, you see, so much of problems and all that. And yeah, that exactly. So if you have interest in that, I think if you have not read that book, I'll recommend that you do read this book also.
No, I'll check that out. So thank you for that. And again, thank you for your time, for sharing your thoughts, your insights. I think Interloop is a shining star and sort of shows the world what Pakistan is capable of. So thank you for building this organization and helping build it with your employees and your managers and your shareholders and your stakeholders. I love the mission statement in terms of being a positive agent for change. So I personally, I keep an eye in terms of what Interloop is doing. So good luck to you. And thank you again. And inshallah, when I'm in Pakistan next, I'll get to see you in person and we'll talk more.
Please do. Thank you so much for having me. It has been a pleasure. Thank you, Uzair. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.